and listen to people. They failed to engage. They failed to listen to the 62% of people in Scotland who voted Remain. They failed to listen to the Scottish Government when they tried to put forward a compromise agreement if Brexit was going to be put ahead. They failed to listen to the Scottish Parliament, every single party except the Tories, and they failed to listen to our MPs in Parliament. And now they're going through the charade of putting a leadership contest together, which is going to just deliver somebody who's ultimately just going to follow in the footsteps of the incumbent Prime Minister at the moment.
The man in the white shirt.
Many people claim the EU is undemocratic, yet 0.2% of the population will be deciding the future Brexit deal that we get with the EU. Surely that's a contradiction.
Take back control. That was the slogan. Yes, the man at the back there.
Yeah, I'm not bothered about how they pick somebody, just as long as the person at the pick is willing to leave on WTO terms.
Right. OK. Man there in the glasses.
Well, our country's a democratic country. We're remembering all the people that obviously fought for us in D-Day and remembering that. So why are we letting another Prime Minister come in from a Prime Minister that was unelected already when the country's clearly lost confidence in the party themselves?
Woman here in the corner.
What my question is United Kingdom is when Wales, Ireland, well, Northern Ireland, Scotland and England unite on a decision. So when we voted and out EU won, to me that meant that was the final decision. Why isn't there anybody in the Parliament got enough sense to make that decision?
Well, we have been trying. I mean, we have been trying to pass the
no,
withdrawal agreement.
No.
But what is Michael Gove suggesting? I mean, he set out his stall today in a bit more detail than he has hitherto. Yep. What's he suggesting that hasn't been tried already? Can you tell me one thing?
Well, I think it's a lot more about working specifically with Ireland. It's also about making sure...
But yes, just on that, give me one thing he's suggesting that hasn't been tried already.
Well, he's talking about putting much more work into restoring the Stormont Assembly. One of the things... I mean, there have been many
that's going to be the thing that unlocks it, the whole thing. That's the one thing.
Well, you know, Fiona, that there's not just one thing that's going to unlock it. It'll be a combination of things. And actually, it's been very interesting listening to some of the debates from a couple of years ago, how people have moved. And I think people have moved in Parliament. People have moved further from the shock, whether they were celebrating or very miserable about what happened in June 2016. People have now moved. I've moved. I wanted to remain in the EU. I frankly now just want us to get on with it, get out. I'm afraid I disagree with WTO terms completely, but I do want there to be a deal, because I think this country absolutely needs to move on. And I'm somebody who's got a different view from Michael Gove, but I very much think he is absolutely ready to lead the country. He set out a very clear plan today. Part of it involves Ireland, Stormont Assembly, involving obviously a whole new team of negotiators, going back to the point for the lady here about really tough negotiators, but also thinking about the future relationship as well, but also making sure that we have a full stop, bring the backstop to an end as quickly as possible. And some quite interesting noises tonight from the EU that have been reported by the BBC's chief Europe correspondent.
Annalise?
Well, to go back to the original question, all the decisions around this should not be being made by a very, very small number of people, by just around 100,000 of them. And actually, what we see occurring at the moment is a kind of bidding up between all the different candidates about whether they would countenance a very extreme Brexit. And I'm afraid I don't agree with the gentleman. Obviously, everyone's got different views on this. But if you look at what the impact of leaving without a deal would be on jobs. I mean, I'm very concerned about this because I live very near to a car plant which has said very explicitly what the impact of that would be on complicated supply chains. I think it's a responsibility, actually, of all of us to think about people's jobs and the impact of decisions on people. And yet you've got some Conservative leadership candidates who are even saying, well, you know, maybe we could think about not having Parliament sit at all until we get to the leaving date.
Hang on, wait, that was interesting. So you want to talk about Dominic Raab, and you just said, hang on, he's mad.
No, I said it's... No, I didn't say... I said it's mad.
Oh,
and clearly, proroguing Parliament... I'm sorry to interrupt, Annalise, but proroguing Parliament is clearly a mad suggestion. You cannot say you're going to take back control to Parliament, have Parliament sovereignty, and then go, oh, by the way, we're just going to shut Parliament down for a couple of months, so we're just going to drift out on a no.
Out of interest, what do you do when 3/4 of our Parliament have for 3 years and I voted Remain, have for 3 years steadfastly refused to enact the result of that referendum?
Well, thank you. Let's let Annalise answer that, because we interrupted you.
I'm really curious what the MPs have to say about
maybe
that.
I can respond
let's
if you
let
give me
one
a
answer.
second. Thanks for that.
You can have as many seconds as you like.
Brilliant, good, because I can explain to you that actually, for the last many, many months, those of us, including myself, who campaigned to remain, initially thought, right, there is the result, we need to deliver that result, there has to be compromise, OK? And that's what I looked for from the first time that I came into Parliament. That was what I expected we would get from the governing party and from MPs within it. What we sadly had instead is a small group of MPs within that ERG group, that very right-wing group, and they've said nothing is acceptable to them apart from having an extreme Brexit that they know, and they've seen the evidence. This is people who've seen the briefings.
So what is Labour? Out of interest, what is Labour's position?
Well,
because it seems to change every week.
No, it doesn't.
So
And
why don't you clarify for
with
everybody,
respect-
what is Labour's position?
With respect, Piers, you've seen, surely...
Tell me.
And you're...
I have no idea. Jeremy Corbyn looked me in the eye and said there would never be a second referendum.
Well, I'm very
Your
sorry,
last
Piers,
manifesto, the last election, promised to deliver Brexit. Nothing you've done since shows anybody in this country that as a party you have any will to deliver Brexit
Well, I'm very sorry,
at all.
Piers. I think you've been living in a bunker, quite frankly, for the last few months.
I think your leader has. Your leader has.
If you've not seen...
When was your leader last on this programme?
Actually, it's called question time.
Yes.
The reason is because there's a lot of people in the audience who want to ask questions, so let's just hear from you there in the front.
I just think it's a bit outrageous, Piers, that you're turning on somebody for changing their mind when you're happy for Donald Trump to change his mind in 30 seconds.
So the original question was, let me drag you back to it, was about, can it be right that 150,000 people decide the next
Well, I think the simple answer to that has got to be no, because that 150,000 people, I think you can be fairly certain a lot of them will have absolutely no idea about the lives of a lot of ordinary people who are trying to make ends meet and who have been sort of suffering with the last 9 years of austerity. They're possibly quite unlikely to be within that 150,000. So where does that leave us? Well, the other difficulty we've got is that we've got some leadership hopefuls who are drifting further and further to the right. They're offering tax cuts. They're cutting the top rate of income tax. It's the same old Tory stuff that you would expect in a bid to please that 150,000. And as Boris Johnson has said, that to not deal with a very hard Brexit that he is prepared, because otherwise the idea of extinction, they will do anything to anyone at any cost to get that job. And that's where we're left, because they're pandering to that 150,000.
It's interesting that no one has mentioned the Brexit Party yet. Of course, there's a by-election going on in Peterborough. We don't yet know the result. We will know later tonight or in the small hours. We wait to see the result of that. I mean, much of the Tory vote, of course, going to the Brexit Party, as we saw in the EU election.
Yes, sadly that is the case, and I think the way to stop that is to deliver Brexit. And so that's why we've got to get on with it. Look, I'm on the more liberal side of the Conservative Party. I think the answer is not just to go chasing off after Brexit Party votes. It's got to be to appeal to the people who voted Conservative in 2010 and 2015, often from the Labour Party or the Liberal Democrats, and that's the way we build a strong coalition to make sure that we are returned. And obviously, I must just pick up Alison. I mean, I think please don't make assumptions about all Conservative Party members and their backgrounds and everything else. I mean, like any organisation, there's going to be a wide variety of different experiences. But people actually, I don't think you can be a councillor or even knock on doors, which is what most of us spend our times doing, without actually getting a very good sense and conversations and understanding. And as a constituency member of Parliament, you know, absolutely, I get to see, in fact, the people who ask my help more are the people, a wide variety of different experiences. But people actually even knock on doors, which is what most of us spend our times doing, without actually getting a very good sense and conversations and understanding. And as a constituency member of Parliament, you know, absolutely, I get to see, in fact, the people who ask my help more and more are the people who very much need it, who, you know, for reason claims or housing or anything else, you know, we do have an understanding.
That is those people. But that perception is there that is those people. I mean, I don't know if many Conservative Party members are here tonight. Any? Oh, right.
Woo!
and how...
Not young.
It's not.
He's young, not a pensioner.
Well, let's hear from you then.
What I wanted to say Nick, I hate to offend you, but a lot of the voters have gone to... You support Gove, who stated he wants to put the Brexit party is. You're supporting a man like Gove, who stated he wants to push Brexit even further back. It was an insult to the British people that we didn't leave on the 31st of March. Why should I vote for you? Like, I'm a member, but I'm certainly not going to be putting my vote towards Gove. It's going to be towards Boris Johnson. Absolutely. Crowd can feel I'm passionate, no, to leave the EU, sorry, on the 31st.
Well, can I answer?
I think you better had.
Look, it's obviously it's a very good call. Very much wants to leave on the... That'd be fantastic. But the point is with a deal...
I mean, he called that date arbitrary, didn't he?
Well, you couldn't quite... Some wanted a year extension to March 2020. Others wanted to do less, so they came up with that October. It is actually nearly there with a deal.
I mean, he called that date arbitrary.
That people respect the Conservatives, the way that we run the economy. The no-deal Brexit will absolutely... we do not know what the damage will be, but it will be considerable. Even those who advocate in the party wanting a no-deal have said they accept there will be a disruption. Why would we want to put the country through that if, as Michael is saying, if we had a couple more days or weeks, we were near there with the deal, that's what he's talking about. Not an endless delay, because I appreciate your right to get on with it, but we've got to do the responsible thing to try to get a deal over the line.
You're putting your, opinion ahead of the people. You basically, I know you're not directly saying it, but the 17.4 million people who voted to leave, we were promised that we were going to leave on the 29th of March. As parliamentarians are currently feeling, they feel like they are smarter than the average person.
Piers, I mean, you said the only true Brexit is a no-deal Brexit.
Yeah, we're here in Thetford, and the local district here, the area, 64% voted to leave. In the recent EU election, 46% voted for Brexit Party here, which was almost more than all the other parties put together. So the message from this part of the world is very loud and clear. Get on with it and get out of the European Union. And I keep hearing people didn't know what they were voting for. You're all too stupid if you voted leave, all 17.4 million of you. Well, I remember going in and finding a ballot paper, and it didn't mention a deal. It didn't mention anything else. It just said, do you want to stay in the European Union or do you want to leave? And you ticked a box for one or the other. And it is scandalous, frankly. And I say it again as a Remainer. It is scandalous for our democracy that here we are 3 years later and we're still kicking this can down the road. No one's really got a plan of any of these leadership contenders, as far as I can see.
And you're not a Remainer now, though, Piers, are you?
Sorry?
You're not a Remainer now.
No, I think the only way to resolve this is not more referendums and not more years agonising. Everyone is bored of this, right? They want leadership and they want decision-making. At the moment, a lot of companies are having problems through uncertainty. And this thing about it's going to be a disaster. I think we don't really know. I remember the debate over the euro in the early part of this century, when a lot of the people like Alistair Campbell, Tony Blair, Ken Clarke, Michael Heseltine were all shouting just as loudly then that if we didn't enter the euro, it would be a disaster for this country. Well, we didn't enter the euro, and it turned out to be the best thing we never did. So I take a lot of these predictions with a pinch of salt. This country, we will survive whatever happens, but let's make a decision and get on with it.
Yes, the man there in the glasses.
How many of you talk very, very well.
Oh, OK, hang on. It was just a chap in front, actually. I'm sorry, and then I'll come to you in a minute.
He was about to have a go at me, so that's good.
Oh, I'm rather sorry I cut you off, sir. Anyway, yes.
Sorry, mate.
With Parliament still divided and the numbers as they are now, could a government survive a no-deal Brexit?
OK,
well,
let's hear from...
We'd be into general election territory, at which point I think we'd have
You'd be rather marvellous for you, Annalise, at that point.
by Christmas, which would be even more disastrous.
Why would it? I do not.
Hang on, let's... Don't shout out, we'll get the microphone over you.
So, what I've been lifelong Conservative, and all we ever get is, if you don't vote for us now, you'll get Jeremy Corbyn. Well, how can it be any worse? We've got no democracy. If every MP had voted what the constituents had wanted, we would have been out 2-1. But Labour and the Conservative have got no intention of ever taking us out. So actually, I'm ashamed to have been a Conservative all my life, because I may as well have not bothered, because none of you have got the integrity to respect your things. Every Leave MP every Leave community should have been represented by a Leave MP, and if they wanted the job, they should have done it. Likewise, Remain communities, their MP should have fought for their Remain preferences. None of you are bothered.
No, the man back there in the picture, I cut you off.
I'd like to know if the country is in such a mess. You talked about how many of you are prepared to be in a party that is prepared to prorogue Parliament? You've made such a big fuss about how important we are, it's democratic.
Well, Nicky's already said it's a mad idea.
Oh, has she?
Yes.
Oh, well,
Yes.
I didn't.
She did.
Didn't
She said it was
get
mad.
that.
I thought you were saying Dominic Raab was mad, which was
So
highly
what about,
entertaining,
what
but
about
she wasn't.
Piers then?